Hello, and welcome to Sound Off with System One. I'm your host, Krista Kornchuk, and I'm here today with our panel of experts to discuss your biggest interview and resume questions. That means if you're tuning in live, you can send us your most pressing job search related questions, and we'll answer them for you. But before we get started, here are a few words about System One. System One is a leading provider of specialized, highly technical outsourced services and workforce solutions to critical infrastructure, technology, life sciences, and government sectors, putting more than 650 employees and 9,000 contractors to work in the United States, Canada, and the UK. As you're tuning in today, please join us in the comments. Our marketing team will be monitoring them. Let us know where you're joining from and which industry you work in. And as I said before, we encourage you to send us your most pressing job search related questions, as this week's episode is a live Q&A. And next, we're going to have our panel of experts introduce themselves. They're also going to be sharing their hot jobs, which you can find at the bottom of the screen or by scanning the QR code. And to view all other available jobs, please visit jobs.system1.com. Amanda, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Knuth. I am a senior staffing coordinator with System One Commercial, and I'm based in New Jersey. I have a hot job available today that's for an accounting assistant in Parsippany, New Jersey. This is a direct hire role with one of our clients that's within the engineering space. They're ultimately looking for somebody with about 5 years experience in bookkeeping, accounting, or finance, and they're going to be supporting the organization's teams, managing financial records, handling reconciliations, budget prep, etc. It is a great opportunity. The team is very nice there. We've gotten great feedback from other people we've worked with to place with the client. I'd love the opportunity to speak with anybody that's interested in the position, so please feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. How's everybody doing today? I am John Jansen. I'm a senior staffing coordinator with System One Commercial as well. I am excited to be here. I was sharing that I used to work for System One back in 2014 to 2016 and came back about a year and a half ago. So excited to be back here. The hot job that I'm sharing today is for an assembler in Summit, New Jersey. It's in manufacturing. It is a direct hire position. Interesting hours, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5, Friday, a little bit of a shorter day, 8 to 2. Target salary for it is $58,000 to $68,000. General description would be assembling and fitting mechanical components, including building and testing, like heavy industrial equipment similar to milling machines, ensuring that the specifications and quality control standards are met. This role requires 3 years of experience with industrial rotating equipment. Proficiency in reading and interpreting engineering drawings and blueprints. And particularly a plus for the position is if the candidate has experience with high-speed rotating equipment and owns SAE or metric tools. So a good manufacturing position. Excited to speak with any candidates that are interested, and please feel free to reach out if that's you.
Fantastic. And make sure you connect with our experts on LinkedIn if you are trying to get these jobs or want to discuss similar positions. And again, you can visit jobs.system1.com. All right, so before we have our questions roll in, I'm going to have our experts share a piece of advice that they've been sharing with their candidates or common questions, common struggles. So Amanda, we'd love to start with you.
Yeah, so obviously, this job market that a lot of job seekers are in right now is very challenging, and it can be, it can be tough to go through. Something that we've come across with a lot of people is just getting down on themselves during that job search process. So it's important to stay positive and stay consistent and make sure you're networking with a lot of people. The job search process is obviously very time consuming right now. And it seems like things are, kind of drawing out a little bit longer than I'm sure companies also hope they would be. So just staying consistent, staying positive, continuing to network, continuing to, keep applying and really trying, all that you can do is really what's important right now.
For me, one of the things I'm finding with candidates that I'm offering for advice, I've heard the statistic for a few years now that 75% of hires are being made through personal recommendation. So perfect time to talk about LinkedIn. And if you're not aware of what LinkedIn is, it's basically similar to Facebook, but it's a professional networking website. It just allows you to form personal relationships with people in your industry, with hiring managers, recruiters. We're really finding, statistically at least, that 75% of those hires are made through recommendation, whether it's a friend, a family member, a neighbor, someone you're networking with on LinkedIn through your industry and organizations. That's really the place to be. So I like to use the flip side of that, like 25% of hires are being made through the common application. So definitely a priority for job seekers to be looking into LinkedIn, even in a basic level. Create a profile. It'll walk you through how to set it up in a very simple manner. And then, work with recruiters similar to myself, or do your own research on how to use the platform in order to network with those you're looking to start a conversation with. It's important, the timing. You want to plant seeds early with the people you're trying to form a relationship with. The worst position to be in is when you're desperate for a job and you're reaching out with an ask. Just in standard relationship building in life, you usually want to form the relationship first before you kind of have an ask there. So I just wanted to shed a little bit of light on that. I think LinkedIn is a very powerful tool in business networking, personal networking, and for your career.
Fantastic. And it looks like we have a question from one of our viewers. Danielle is asking, how do we get around AI reviewing software? So I think she says AI reviewing your resume, if that provides a little more insight.
Sure. At least from my perspective, I think that that has been a very common misconception in the market. AI, specifically, if you're talking about applicant tracking systems, they're really a tool for recruiters, a tool for filing, applications and candidate information and where they're at throughout the process. There are certain things you can do within an applicant tracking system to highlight relevant keywords from applications you're looking at and whatnot, but people seem to think that there's some sort of back end process where the application or the applicant tracking system screens out candidates themselves. But it's really a high misconception as far as applicant tracking systems. But it is important that there's a little bit of logic there if you're able to point your resume in the direction of the position you're trying to apply to by incorporating the proper language, the right type of keywords, that will help, at least on the applicant tracking side. A recruiter that reviews that will see some of those keywords highlighted, kind of just gives that credibility that you might be a good match. But it also, in terms of like optics and impressions, when somebody opens up your resume, you're going to have the right type of language and the right type of keywords to do kind of the same thing in that recruiter's mind. So that's how I would handle it.
It's tough. It's tough to, get past the thought that your resume could be rejected because of an AI screening. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different factors that go into that. I don't have much to add just because John's actually a certified professional resume writer. So he's very knowledgeable in that space. So he covered all of that very well.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And we are going to have a guide coming out, so stay tuned for it. It's going to help you optimize your resume for that AI recruiting software. So just keep checking on LinkedIn and we'll have that guide for you. Looks like we have another question. How do you deal with age? I feel a lot of companies are not looking to hire a person my age. Great question.
Ultimately, we can't necessarily tell age by a resume. That's, one thing to pinpoint. When you're applying to a position, you don't always necessarily put your age on there. I think, unfortunately, the job search is tough for a lot of people right now across the board. Age being a factor, I personally, we haven't dealt with that with our clients. Ultimately, there's, it's not something that is true in my, experience in recruiting. A lot of the companies we work with, there are some companies that are looking for entry-level people. Obviously, entry-level, they're looking for somebody with not a lot of work experience. You would think age, plays a factor there. But companies want people that are qualified. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, just my off-the-hip perspective on it. I always, when I'm talking to candidates about this, I think that, age discrimination, while, absolutely illegal in the process, if it happens, it's 5 or 10% of the time. And so I would just really focus on, what the role is and what your skills are and your experience, and, look into the company, the culture, and all those type of things. And, if it does come down to where you're declined and it was because of ageism, let's say, it's not a place you want to work at anyway. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't really worry necessarily so much about that. And if you're pointing your experience and your skill sets, I mean, that's really where an employer should be looking at on how you can add value to that opportunity, to the organization, its goals, and beyond. You know what I mean? So I think it's just a lot of these small factors like the ATS system, the ageism thing, like they're very small percentage of the time. So I definitely wouldn't advise to focus on it, focus on the latter.
Yeah, fantastic. And we have another question. How do you convey employment gaps during the interview?
I think you can just be open and transparent in what that employment gap is, if that's something that you're comfortable with. Whether that's putting it on your resume, saying that you have, from this date to this date, you were unemployed for, whatever reason, whether that was, personal choice, if you have an employment gap because you took off to spend time with family, whatever that gap is, put it on the resume. Convey that during the interview, talk about it, say, why you took that off. You can use that time to say maybe other things that you did when you were taking that time off. Ultimately, if somebody's a fit for the position, again, that's really what the companies are looking for. Employment gaps, I think, are way more common now than they used to be. I've been with System 1 for 10 years. There's definitely been a huge change in our clients' perception on what an employment gap is and how that can be a negative. We've seen over the past few years that that's not something that clients are necessarily worried about if somebody's qualified, obviously, for the position.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I 100% agree. And if I feel like we need to provide a reason, depending, it's all case by case, like how big is the gap, this type of thing. In my opinion, like if it's 3 to 6 months, it's not really considered a gap in my mind, but I could totally see how that could be taken differently depending on the context, the client, the organization, whatever. But I would say, like kind of Amanda alluded to, I would just say, how would you put this on your resume? Between the two sets of employment where you have the gap, you could even write a line for a gap explanation and then provide the reason, just to kind of clear that up. My biggest philosophy on the resume, if you're targeting the resume toward the employer, then you should be sort of serving up your information on a silver platter to that recruiter. So if there's any question that you're leaving in their mind that you don't answer up front, then it's something you're leaving in their mind. And then they might decide maybe I shouldn't call them. So you should just provide everything that you possibly can to give the full spectrum of your experience and then see where it goes.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good piece of advice.
And when the recruiter wins, you win. So your recruiter is there as an advocate for you. We have another question. Can you tell us more about virtual recruiter interviews? How are the answers to questions reviewed?
Yeah, I don't have too much experience with this, but I know a little bit about it. We just started implementing this here at System 1 as well. But I think it's a way that, when recruiters put their jobs into the system to be sent out to the platforms that you're applying through, like Indeed or whatever, we could put a couple of pre-qualifying questions on there to provide you with an opportunity to shed light on the background that we might be interested in. So it's just a pre-screening qualification. This day and age, because of, technology and where we're at, applications have really become a hard thing to manage because the public can just apply to these positions. So there's a lot of times where we have, let's say, a high level marketing position and we have, half or more percentage of the applications are forklift drivers. So I'm sure you can see how that may not work out. So it just becomes a difficult thing to manage there. What was the point of this question again? I get on tangents and then I forget what we're talking about. What was the question again?
Absolutely. It's virtual recruiter interviews and how.
Yeah. Okay. So just on the back end, it just helps the recruiter understand quickly what your relevant skills are and honestly to pick up the phone and give you a call. So, those are just set there. I would recommend answering them to the best of your ability. As Amanda alluded to, it's a tough job market. There's a lot of additional things employers are asking for. There's always the upload your resume and then refill out the application. As much as you can, you want to try to apply to, and everybody needs a job. So you got to apply to whatever you can, but you should focus on those ones that you spend all the time on and you want to do really well with. You should focus your resume toward that job and everything. And then, take the time to provide those answers. Because particularly with those questions, recruiters are going to see them on the back end with your application and basically make a decision if they want to call you, likely on those questions alone, on how you answer them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and as far as reviewing it on our end, when we have those pre-screened questions that are put out, which would be, I think what this person is alluding to being the virtual recruiter interview, those questions are questions that we know are a hard requirement for our client for that specific position. So if we're asking if somebody has a certain software, if somebody has a certain skill set, it's because we know that is a requirement for that position. So if you're answering questions from a virtual recruiter and you are answering no to questions that are for specific softwares, unfortunately, you may not be the right fit for that position. We still will receive those responses, and on our end, it just comes through as an email. So we see those responses. We can still see the resume. That doesn't mean that we don't necessarily review those resumes, because even though you may not be a fit for that position, we could help you elsewhere. So ultimately, it's just a little bit of help for us to kind of weed through some of those applications that shouldn't necessarily be at the top of our list to call for those positions in particular.
Fantastic. And can you remove things from your resume for positions where you may seem overqualified? Great question, Virginie.
I think, it's a hard question to answer directly, because it's totally dependent on, the case-by-case basis with the person. What is the job? What is your experience related to that job? And kind of as a whole, if I was working with somebody on a resume, we would kind of decide what can we omit and why, and what's it going to do for our ability to impact, on the manager, and is it going to create a gap in our resume? There's so many questions to ask around it, but I would say just think about, the marketing aspect of your resume. If you're leaving out 5 years of experience, it's probably going to leave a question in the mind of the recruiter or the hiring manager, like, what were you doing during that time? So maybe that's a good opportunity to explain it in the resume. If you're going to omit it, maybe you provide some sort of gap explanation or some sort of other way of promoting it. But I think as a whole, if you cross that bridge about like aiming your background, it wouldn't be what I wouldn't want to see is somebody who has like experience recently with a position and then like 15 years ago, and that's all they include on their resume, because you do need kind of a robust idea of what your work experience is. And employers, want to see consistent, and throughout the years they look for loyalty, maybe not loyalty, but just tenure at a position. Have you been there long term? Do you job hop a lot? So there's really just more to consider with whether or not we'd be able to omit certain experience and why.
And on top of it, kind of a similar question. Someone is asking why a candidate may be told they're overqualified when applying for specific positions. Have you guys run into that often?
On our end with our clients, unfortunately that does happen. Somebody may be overqualified. What I've seen from the rejection standpoint, if somebody is determined to be overqualified in feedback, and even just like my thought process is somebody might be bored in that position. Why would you want to go from this level of opportunity to something much lower? It's almost, I don't know if it's a red flag, but, getting there and, why are you looking to make that change? Of course, there's instances where somebody wants something that's slower paced. Somebody wants a better work-life balance. There's a lot of different factors that go into it, but that can be, just something that is almost, making the company a little bit nervous to hire somebody that's overqualified, because you don't know how long they're going to last in that position, moving forward.
And, just my thought on that is, as we alluded to, it's a really tough job market. And, after the pandemic, and it's a lot of remote base and more opportunity in different states and whatever. And here I go again. I set it up and then I forget my point. Unbelievable.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Knowing your market is key. It definitely plays a huge role. And someone's asking, can we apply for multiple roles within a company?
If you're qualified, yes. If you're qualified for the position, if you're okay with, the specifics of the position, apply to whatever you are qualified for. We see people that consistently apply to different roles that we have available. We are always, comfortable working with somebody on more than one position at once. Obviously, our end goal is to, service our clients, but we're also working with a large population that's looking for work. So at least on our end, however we can help somebody and, get enough, candidates to our clients, quality resumes, et cetera, is what it comes down to and what's important.
Just to piggyback on that a little bit, if you're applying to a company for 3 positions, just be aware of like all of the optics. Like someone can see on the back end that you've applied to 3 positions kind of at the same time, right? At 11 o'clock at night, you did one at 11:03, one at 11:15, and one at 11:30. So you're just kind of firing them out there. So like, how much are you really interested in each one of those roles would be a question in my mind. So maybe how you could advance yourself there is to write a great cover letter for each one of those positions to let them know your qualifications and why you're interested, and kind of explain that. As the cover letter would be your opportunity to speak kind of directly with the hiring manager on your intention. So.
Perfect. And looks like we have another question coming in. Do you guys have any tips for settling nerves and maintaining composure during an interview? Great question, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. This is a big one for me. I get nervous all the time. I was nervous before I was doing this. I think a big thing for nerves, and maybe this isn't applicable, but, regular exercise is good. Before you do something that you're nervous about, if possible, try to do some hard exercise. It seems to kind of even you out a little bit. But other than that, I mean, it's breathing, that could be a great one. But really just preparation. I feel like if you're not prepared, that's where a lot of those nerves come from. So, there's definitely ways that we could advise you. I mean, definitely reach out. We could talk about ways you could do that. But I just think simply being prepared and knowing your own story and how it applies to being qualified for this job, and just to, kind of know what to expect. If we're talking about, say, an interview, what are like the basic questions that might come my way, or what are the most difficult questions that might come my way? And so since we're kind of in an interview standpoint here, like on the topic, I think that you should prepare for those basic interview questions. If you even just Google the basic interview questions and see what they are, and make, in your mind, make some responses to that, practice them, work them out, evolve them. But also, if you weren't familiar with this yet, you should prepare yourself for behavioral-based interview questions. It was popular about 10 or 15 years ago, and now it's really become the norm. And it makes a lot of logical sense. I mean, they basically just ask you an open-ended question and allow you to navigate through how you tell them that story. And it allows you an opportunity to shed light on, your experience related to that. So you should really just practice like good stories. And if you look up behavioral-based interviewing, there's even kind of a system already set up for you called the STAR system. And it gives you a good framework for telling your story. You should explain the situation, the task you were involved with, the actions you took or who you involved, and then ultimately what was the result. Any great story kind of follows that flow. So you should do the same. So just preparation will definitely help you with your nerves. You certainly can't eliminate them entirely, but I think that would be great advice to take.
And also keep in mind, everybody has nerves. So I think people will be very sympathetic of that. How to handle interview questions about a skill that you're not very familiar with? Great question, Hassan.
If you're in an interview and there's a difference, I think it's important to note that there's a difference between what we would call hard requirements for a position and other, preferred skills that a company is looking for. So if you apply to a position and you check off all those boxes for their quote unquote hard requirements for that position, the other skills that you're not familiar with, research, them. If that's like a technical skill, you can look them up before an interview to make sure that you have knowledge about what that skill is. If it is something that you can learn, just preface and make sure you get across to the employer, the person that you're interviewing with, that you're ready to learn that skill, that it's something that you think you can accomplish. Show other skills that pertain to that skill that you're not necessarily familiar with, and highlight those to get across that it's something that you can definitely learn.
Yeah, I mean, one thought that came to my mind is that, if there was something there for a skill that I didn't have, I would definitely just get familiar with what that is, and then how the skills that I have apply to that. So if it's like a technical system like SAP or ERP systems, I would try to figure out like what exactly is that. And I have experience in Salesforce and Excel. And so like what parts of those software packages relate to like what they're looking for. So even though I don't have it, like I'm totally prepared for the complexities involved, and I want to, kind of learn the skills. So I would just try to tie that into my background and say, kind of like Amanda said, why you'd be ready to learn that skill. I think it'd be a great way to go after it.
Absolutely. And we have two more questions. The first one is, let's say someone applies for two different roles within the same company and they tailor their resume for each specific role. This person wants to know, is the resume going to look like a duplicate?
I think this is where it's important to keep track of the jobs and companies, with the companies that you're applying for. If you apply to 2 different positions with System 1 and we see, 2 entirely different resumes, we're going to wonder why there are 2 entirely different resumes. So it's just something to note. If you've applied to one position with a company and then you see something else and you want to, maybe tailor your experience a little bit, put it in the cover letter. There's different things that you can highlight. When you're tailoring a resume, you're changing it a little bit, but you're not completely, changing it entirely. So highlighting different, factors, even if you just move some verbiage around, I think that's, really what you want to do, especially if it's more than one position at the same company.
Yeah, and just sharing a thought that came to my mind. I mean, I'd like to, it's very difficult if you're, have worked your whole life in one career and you want to switch to another and you have no experience in that area. Very creative ways you can kind of look to, you just want to market yourself the best way possible. Man, I can't believe how many times I get off on a tangent. And then can you help me, Amanda?
This is, I work closely with John, and this is what happens every day.
I'm reading the questions. I got a lot in my mind I want to share. So I get lost. I'm sorry, guys.
It's really just making sure you're covering all bases. So keep track of where you're applying. Make sure you're, not changing your resume up too much, and really just highlighting the important parts. So
I remember quickly, if I can share. So like my background is in business development, career services, and recruiting. So if I'm applying to a recruiting position, I go through my resume and take stock of like, where am I talking about this? Am I prioritizing recruiting bullet points at the top of my sections, or am I leaving them toward the bottom? I just kind of look at like, how am I representing myself? Do I come across as a business developer? Do I come across as a recruiter and highlight those points? Or do I come across like in career services? So for everybody, unless you're trying to make a big change, that would be a little bit different, but everybody has maybe 2 or 3 different types of backgrounds. So like you would probably likely be applying to positions that are supported by your background. So you would just choose to like, how are you marketing yourself toward this one? So yeah, they're kind of similar, maybe a little bit duplicate, but it wouldn't take long for me to realize if you're applying to a business development rep and you've sort of formatted it that way for me to see it, and I see this duplicate one that's sort of formatted for recruiting, you have both, I would understand why you're sort of doing that, But that's what came to mind.
Absolutely. And our last question, our grand finale question, how should candidates approach questions about salary expectations or benefits? Fantastic question.
This is I feel like this is a topic that you have 2 sides to this. 50% of people think that candidates should never disclose the salary that they're looking for. And then 50% of until they hear from the client, what they're looking to pay, till they hear from the company. And then 50% of people think that you should just tell the company what you're looking for, so you're not wasting your time or their time. I feel like I am right in the middle of that. And this is obviously just my opinion. If I'm working with someone, I can give you an example. Somebody today, I have a salary range with a company. It ends at $28 an hour. This person's looking for low 30s. With that being said, I disclosed to them what the company was looking to pay. I always do that if I have that information. I also told them I'm not sure if the company will go that high, but it doesn't hurt to ask. If somebody has a set salary requirement that they need, because obviously we all need to make what we are number one worth, and then number 2, what we need to survive, basically. Just tell whoever you're speaking with. There's nothing wrong about saying what you're looking for salary-wise. And I also think it's important to know what companies are paying for that position, because it's a tough job market. So you want to make sure you're not, kind of selling yourself short with anything, and you also want to make sure you're not targeting too high because you want to get that interview, you want to get in front of the company. But it's important to be honest, because otherwise you can waste your time, and everybody's time is valuable. So just having that conversation is important, and offering that information if the company asks is also important, because they don't want to waste your time either.
Absolutely.
So if we have a second, I can piggyback. If not, that's fine.
Absolutely. Yes, please do.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, again, very nuanced and situational, but just some general advice I give out to people. And obviously, if you don't know the salary, you're not sure if you're interested in the position, this would be a different scenario. But if you have applied and you've got a phone call and you're getting set up for this position, you're uncertain of the salary and all this, I would, there's so much networking involved in interviewing too. Sometimes I just interview to network with people. So if you're in there, you take it all the way to the end. And if they make you an offer, then you deal with negotiating. I wouldn't worry about talking about that up front. Just focus on your skills and what you're able to provide, what the company's culture is like, and what it is for you. And, you have to have some understanding. Like if I'm applying to a logistics manager, like I better be a logistics manager, and I should probably fall within some sort of competitive pay rate. I mean, it's not going to be a difference of 50,000 to 150,000 for a logistics manager. I mean, I know it's important to know where they'd like to be, but if you find yourself in that scenario, it's always important to not really be talking about money up front. Wait until they even make you an offer. And then, I would always, especially if they put you on the spot about it, just say like, this is so exciting. I'm so glad that I've got an offer. This company is, X, Y, and Z to me. I'm really excited. How quickly do you need to know? You know what I mean? Or when do I need to reply by? And if they say, it's Thursday, you can let us know by Monday. Great. I'll take the weekend. I'll talk to my significant other and I'll get back to you. And that's actually can be part of a negotiation strategy. Take a little bit of time back, figure out your strategy and come back to them on Monday, especially if you're looking to counter the offer, kind of set it up that way so that you're handling those conversations kind of where they belong in the process. But that was my thought there.
Absolutely. And I like that you said, it's still a networking opportunity. There's always something that can be gained from the job search process. So, nothing was ever lost. If any of you are interested, we have a blog on negotiating and salary, as well as a past Sound Off with System 1 episode, which you can find on YouTube. We are out of time for today, but thank you to everyone who commented. Thank you so much to our expert panel for providing that great insight. Don't forget to follow System 1 on LinkedIn if you haven't already, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can view past Sound Off with System 1 episodes. Make sure you tune in to Sound Off with System 1 every first and third Friday at 2 p.m. for more job seeker topics. Our next episode will be Friday, September 20th at 2 p.m., and we will be discussing interview etiquette. We'll see you then.
Thank you.